Stop what you're doing. Do not even attempt another account-based marketing campaign without first listening to my next guest, especially if you're selling an industrial product. Thad Kahlow is the CEO and founder of BOL Agency in San Diego. Love San Diego. They're an award-winning, omni-channel, B2B-focused agency with 25 years of experience and a deep repertoire of experience specifically with account-based marketing, or as Thad calls it, ABX, account-based experience. Additionally, if you're selling industrial products trying to compete on price, you're about to get schooled. Thad's going to drop some serious knowledge bombs talking about marketing both horizontally and vertically throughout an organization, educating procurement on total cost of ownership versus merely total cost, and how pulling your prospect's customer success personnel into that next pitch just might be the key to winning that next bid. And oh yeah, he has some really interesting ideas about the new age of the younger procurement personnel and how they ain't buying they used to. Guys, ditch the silly SEO blog strategy and start thinking more about account-based experience like Thad Kahlow. Guys, do you love diving deep into different industry niches? Do you want to get one step ahead of your lame, I service every industry vertical under the sun competition?
I service every industry vertical under the sun competition.
Then the Niche Marketing Podcast is the key. And so you know what to do. Don't be shy. Smash the like button, hit subscribe, and get ready for more great niche industry marketing content like this killer episode with Thad Kahlow. All right, and we're back with another segment of the Niche Marketing Podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have Thad Kahlow from BOL Agency in San Diego. Thad, thanks for being here.
Great to be here, John.
Fantastic. Now, one of the many reasons we wanted to have you on the show was because of your deep experience in the industrial and manufacturing space or spaces. BOL Agency has worked a lot in those verticals. Before we really get into some of the nuances, could you talk a little bit about yourself, your professional experience in the space, and then BOL as well?
Oh, my favorite topic, myself, right?
Yeah, right.
For everyone.
That's what Dale Carnegie said, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, so we, Business Online, which was our former name, now we go to BOL Agency, has been working in the digital marketing and performance world for over 25 years now. And
an eternity.
Don't call me old, John. Come on.
I just did. I'm sorry about that, Thad. I'm not too far behind you.
And we focus on growth, mid-market, and enterprise clients, and have a real strong niche in the industrial manufacturing space, having worked with over 100 manufacturers over the years. And they have unique challenges and problems these days. But I think, through the lens of our world, we see it through the lens of brand, demand, and ABM. And that's how we're going to help to host this conversation today and share some of the insights and tips that we have.
Mm-hmm. And you're not getting off that easy. Okay. Are you from the San Diego area originally?
I'm an East Coaster by trade, so right outside the Washington, D.C. area in Northern Virginia.
Okay, Redskins fan? Or?
Just despite my older brother, I went Dallas. So,
wow. Yeah. Okay. NFC East showdown we have here as a hardcore Eagles fan.
It's a big rivalry. That's right.
Okay. And you opened BOL, you said 25 years ago.
Almost 25 years ago. Yep. I actually started it with my dad. He's been in software development for 40 years before that, and we were e-commerce in the cloud for about 5 years, and then we rode the boom to the bust and pivoted in professional services and been doing the B2B performance agency ever since.
Yeah, and did you start it in San Diego or move it to San Diego?
We did start it in San Diego. Yep. Not a bad place to launch and land a business.
Yeah, and how about BOL these days? How big's the agency?
Yeah, we're just under 70 folks right now.
That's great size.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Like, I feel incredibly fortunate about where we are today and where we're going. And we've had our ups and downs like every organization in the world, and it's a good time right now to be in the B2B space specifically, and in the world of performance and media and technology.
Agreed. Lots of exciting things happening. Well, again, we're super excited to have you. I was telling you when we were in the green room there, or when you first got here, that for the many years I lived in San Diego, your reputation always preceded you as a fantastic owner, operator, and agency. So again, super excited to have you contribute some content for us.
Thanks for the kind words, John.
Sure thing. All true. So let's see here. Let's start, as I typically like to, with mapping out the key players in the space a little bit. And with that, clearing up any terminology or jargon which might be confusing to someone that's fairly new to the space. We know that a lot of our listeners are going to be marketers, but marketers that might not necessarily understand the nuances of the space or are just trying to better understand it. So let's start with how something's sourced, right? I mean, your clients are often these manufacturers who want to sell into these OEMs, which we should define. Let's talk about some of the trials, tribulations, and again, players in the space that they need to go through and ultimately sell to or market to.
Yeah, I think if you think about from a macro view, from a 30,000 foot view, one of the largest challenges is, especially for industrial manufacturers, in the way you just described it, John, is they have to sell to an entire buying committee, right? So if you come to the B2C world, you're trying to get a transaction done, you're selling a pair of shoes online, you've got one person who's making that decision, right? Or a car, maybe it's two. It's husband and wife. And in my case, it's my wife making that decision.
Me and you both.
Yep. And so, but in the B2B world, specifically in industrial manufacturing, you have a multitude of buyers who have different needs in terms of how they serve the business, right? Let's just start with procurement. That's the gatekeeper. They're the folks who are wanting to know that they're getting the best price at the best product, the most value. And so they're going to beat you down, but they have a different set of needs than the owner of the product, right? Whoever is using that particular product within whatever they're assembling or manufacturing, right? Mm-hmm. You have executives who are constantly focused on delivering more for less, right? I mean, you think about the economic environment we're in, they have a specific set of needs around how they're trying to grow the organization, but doing it in a cost-effective manner to drive revenue. And then you have, other influencers that are a part of the buying journey that you have to get to know and understand, depending upon the industry. They're going to have a real say in why they're going to choose one manufacturer over another, if that's helpful.
Mm-hmm. And this OEM term, could you help define that for our listeners?
Original equipment manufacturer. So it's where the product essentially is sourced and assembled. And in the manufacturing world, there's lots of OEMs, and there's a high level of complication around how these OEMs operate and what they need in order to be successful. And that's why it's such a large opportunity for folks who are selling into the OEM space.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. And then I think procurement probably stands to or warrants some additional conversation. You had mentioned, of course, procurement's primary function is to buy things and to buy the right things at the right cost, but they have other types of objectives as well, right? So what are some of the other concerns that procurement might have, or other ways to kind of get the intention of procurement without strictly competing on price?
Yeah, it's a tough situation, right? Because you have many organizations that are very aggressive from a procurement perspective. The bigger they are, right, the more aggressive procurement typically is in the buying process, right? And for folks who sell in through procurement, like we do as an agency, it's not easy. I mean, we've worked in environments where it's a reverse e-auction. Like you've been a finalist. They're gonna work with one of three companies, and it's the one who bids down the lowest for price per unit, right? That's a crazy thought. I mean, you literally are, reducing your price. But to the point you just made, John, that's not necessarily a viable business at all times, right? So understanding, a number of the facets that are important to them. One being price. The other one, I think, which typically gets overlooked, is value, right? If you can help procurement to understand at the end of the day that, total cost of ownership, right? It's not just necessarily around price. You can get into a value conversation with procurement. And you typically need to bring in another function within the organization to help articulate that story. So, they're looking for a multitude of things. They're also looking from a legality perspective. Are you going to meet the regulations of the industry or the particular vertical that you're serving? And so understanding those facets, right, I think is super important to getting their attention in the buying process.
Can you think of a few instances where you were helping a client, a manufacturer of an end good, sell into an OEM or another client, and you ultimately were trying to appeal to procurement, but not simply make it about price? Can you talk about maybe some of the specific challenges that buyer had, or ways you were able to convey value to them?
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that in this process, procurement is typically not going to be reacting to marketing function, if you will, right? Someone is the end user of that product, or an executive who's thinking about sourcing a particular manufacturer, it's going to most likely be the front of the line, right? The one who's going to bring you in and begin the conversation and understand, what value you can deliver to the organization. So what we think about there then is like an opportunity to begin to tell the story of why your product or service is going to deliver greater value than your competition, right? So you have to think about it in terms of when procurement gets involved and then how you can actually bring them in, right? So you can actually leverage, and I'm going to go back to marketing right now because that's where I live and that's where we sit. You can bring them into understanding that through, advertising and through content and through experiences as almost like a secondary buyer as you're, moving your sales process through the buying journey.
Okay, very good. And then ABM. It's the hot topic in the space, and for good reason, because it's a very viable, if not the ideal approach to selling into an organization. Could you start by kind of defining ABM and why it is such a viable tactic in the space?
Yeah, it's the hottest topic right now, right? We call it account-based marketing or ABX, which people will call account-based experience, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you think about it and you break it down, there's a couple of core components that are important to understand as opposed to just jumping into some tactics within ABM. First and foremost is it's about building a more personalized buyer's journey, right? Like at the end of the day, we all are growing up on our Apple devices and have an experience with Amazon. We have that expectation digitally. And specifically for manufacturers, right, and industrial manufacturers, we're not necessarily living up to that expectation, right? So ABM, if you think about it, is first and foremost is understanding the needs of your buyers so you can deliver a better buying experience. First of all. Second of all, then it's about personalization. How do you do that, right? Where do you engage them? How do you engage them? What content? What utility, right? You can give information to a particular brand. They can, soak that information in, like let's just say like a calculator, and punch something back out to tell you about the total cost of ownership or the value that is going to be delivered if you work with that particular brand. So if you think about it from those terms, it's not so new or different, right? It's about personalization and it's about building a better buyer's experience. And I would say the last thing to think about at the highest level from an ABM perspective is understanding who your best customers are. Now, this is where it gets interesting in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Having worked with hundreds of manufacturers and industrial manufacturers in our space, and especially with those who have larger ticket items, right? You're buying something that costs $250,000 to $25 million, right? Bigger buying journeys, more people involved, more budgets, more complexity. What we're seeing is a lot of these folks are really challenged with doing something new like account-based marketing because sales have been the rainmakers in these organizations for so long. So full stop, right? A lot of these organizations, every dollar has been attached to folks in the sales seat, right? And that creates a certain dynamic, right? A certain environment and culture with which that drives decisions. Where these folks are really struggling, when I say these folks, manufacturers are really struggling, is to decouple themselves from that and get out of this world of just sales, right? And the relationships those salespeople have. Because that's where they're going to want to go. That's their equity, right? That's what they bring to the table. Right. But as we see these buyers growing, right, in terms of who they are, right, a lot more millennials are buying multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment. How they want to buy, right?
They don't want to talk to a salesperson.
They don't want to talk to a salesperson to start. Eventually they do, right? And they want the right information at the right time in the right way. But most of the buyers today, especially in complex buying journeys, want to self-serve first before they talk to anyone, right? So now this changes everything. And what becomes more important is the lens of marketing and building a better customer experience, right? And that starts with, what we would call upper funnel tactics around engagement with these particular buyers. And that, in my opinion, is why account-based marketing or account-based experience is so important today.
My understanding of the way, the optimal way in which you want to approach ABM is by targeting numerous different departments within an organization, almost kind of surround the buyers. But I don't know if that's fully accurate. Could you speak to that a little bit? I mean, is that central to the ABM philosophy that you're trying to hit these various departments all at once, or do you see it much more about just a small list of accounts to which you're doing hyper-targeted messaging?
I mean, it depends on what you're selling, right? Mm-hmm. And it depends on the buyer group, if you will, around the products and service that you're actually trying to sell into. So let's think about it like this. if you're selling a product that has an average order value, let's say of $100,000, you probably only have a few functions within the organization that you need to hit, maybe one or two, maybe a third as an influencer. And you should do that from start to finish, right? And it's a different message. It's a different value proposition. It's a different way to engage, right? If you're selling, like we do for Honeywell, multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment, the number of functions within the organization grow in complexity, right? And also you're thinking about it from a verticalization perspective too. So now you have a horizontal and a vertical approach that you need to map out in terms of building a customer experience that is unique and differentiated and delivers on their needs throughout that. So that complexity creates a challenge for most marketers.
Mm-hmm. And then in terms of the actual content that you're going to create, I know it's all over the map, but I think immediately a lot of people think of like, blog posts, a written resource center, and maybe a white paper. So kind of like written. And oh yeah, we've got video these days. Could you help us broaden that lens a little bit? And ideally, if you can think of, we don't need a client's name, but maybe an industry vertical you were in, what they were selling, and how you use more unique types of content to execute the strategy?
Yeah, you know what's really interesting, and this is going to sound super tactical right now, but it's a hot topic, right? And that's, chat-based AI, right? Like, let's think about it. Like, Chat GPT is huge right now, right? Microsoft wants to invest and has invested billions of dollars just to be a part of that journey, right? That's kind of mind-blowing to think about for 1 second. An organization that large saying this is going to be the future of our business, right? But let's just break that down for a second. The reason I think something like that is so interesting, right, is because it can create this really personal dialogue that is so necessary in the buyer's journey when we are selling complex products and services to our buyers, right? And so if you can deliver to them answers, right, specific answers that are pinpoint accurate as it relates to their need, think about it, changes everything, because that blog post is static, right? That blog post is written by someone who probably has a strong point of view, who has lived a world and an experience that's different than maybe the buyers that are buying from them. And while it's necessary and valuable and we blog for ourselves and our clients, of course, that's important. And other forms of content, we'll talk about that in a minute. But let's just think about this, this chat-based AI. It changes everything, because now you can give an experience that is unique, that is based on intent, right? And that is timely. And if you think about just that experience alone as one example, it changes everything. It changes the velocity of the buyer's journey because you're giving them the answers that they're looking for.
Super custom.
Yeah, and the better the answer, the better the next question, right? That's what you ultimately want. You want your buyers to be smart, right? We do. Maybe not everyone,
right,
but we do. The smarter the buyer, the better the relationship, the more value we can deliver. And I'll just stop there for a second because I think that is really overlooked right now. And for many manufacturers, especially industrial manufacturers, that's mind-blowing, right? Like, they have a hard time getting 10 blog posts out a week or doing segmentation in a data-driven way, and really understanding who's buying from them, where they are in the buyer's journey, what needs to be served. But adding in things like AI-driven chat, changes the ballgame.
Okay. And so, I know when it comes to marketing, the answer, it depends, is not only often true, but also often frustrating, right? Sure. But when you bring up chat-based or chat-derived content or AI-derived content, you touch on, multiple blog posts that speak to the different audience personas. So is it now, because those tools are available, generally speaking, you look to create just more? Today's episode is brought to you by The Agency Guide. Are you frustrated with an underperforming marketing agency? Who isn't? Are you unsure about what marketing channels to invest in and who to invest with? Maybe you're just fed up with the overpromising and underdelivering of marketing agencies. Fear not. You need to contact The Agency Guide. The Agency Guide, or TAG, represents a vetted pool of 200 plus vetted marketing agencies and consultants, and they will matchmake your brand's specific needs with these trusted marketing professionals for free. That's right, for free. You don't need an expensive agency search firm. You need The Agency Guide. For over 10 years, TAG's experienced marketing consultants have been providing pro bono consulting and matching brands with vetted agencies based on needs, budget, timeline, location, even your personality. They're marketing professionals. They're agency matchmakers. They're the Agency Guide. To learn more, visit www.theagencyguide.com today.
More blog-driven content?
Yes.
Well, that's a good question. And there are many instances in which a thoughtful point of view on a particular topic from a blogging perspective is incredibly important, right? And frankly, let's not diminish the fact that search, right, SEO, is still an enormous part of the buyer journey, right? That folks are are using in order to self-serve, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. So from that perspective, we just break that down. It's still incredibly important because that's going to help you drive search results, right? Make sure that you show up from an educational perspective early in the buyer's journey, right? Top of funnel, if you will.
Yep.
But thinking about chat, you can actually use that as a way to harness like the most relevant topics that your buyers are interested in, right? So we're partners with a company called Drift. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them, John.
I'm not, please.
They're one of the original chat-based AI technology platforms. They're doing exceptionally well. They've got a great piece of technology. A lot of our clients use them, and they integrate well into many of the platforms you use, like the ABM platforms like 6sense and Demand Base and CRM tools. But it's such a wealth of information, right? As you are standing up something like that to create an experience. Because I think content for me, and this is maybe a bit out there, especially for manufacturers, but it's less about content. Content seems so tactical, seems so transactional, right? It's about experience, right? As we're trying to design an experience so your customers lean in, they feel educated, they feel smart, they begin to trust you as they're making, $200,000 to $20 million decisions, right? So important. So understanding that and, sculpting that from the very first advertisement, right? As you begin to introduce yourself and your value proposition, you pull them in all the way through to signing a contract and keeping them, right? Is incredibly important. So, I'd like to think about the notion of that buyer's journey from that lens than it is necessarily just about content itself or a particular blog post.
Yeah, as you talk about that, it reminds me of Marty Neumeier, right? One of the famous brand strategists or brand voices out there, and he talks about how your brand is not what you say it is; it's what people think of when they think of you.
I'm glad you said that.
That's your brand.
Yeah,
and you talk about how you can use content to affect the experience. Well, that really touches on that. This is how you build that brand equity. This is how you differentiate yourself in a often very commoditized marketplace.
You know what? That is such an apropos insight, John. Let me tell you why. That's exactly how I think about brand. Like in the past, brand is about what you wanted to tell the world, who you were, what you stood for, and the products and services you deliver, right? And in today's world, it's just the opposite. It's what you know of your customer and the value you can deliver to them, and that's what your brand is, right? That's where I think all of this is going. And when you think about that, it's one of the things that is at the crux of why I think so many manufacturers and industrial manufacturers struggle with taking digital to the next level, right? We should talk about digital transformation in a second. Hot topic. Everyone's all over it. There's many facets of it. But why can't they get there, right? They're actually, if you think about the history of these organizations, like Lincoln Electric is a former client of ours, or Honeywell, they were built on the backs of these very inventive product engineers, right? Ethnographers that are actually studying the way we use things and saying, I got a better idea. And they take this leapfrog moment and they create and build a beautiful, amazing business, right? But why aren't they doing that in marketing? We're so far behind B2C customers in personalization, leveraging digital, transforming, right? And I think it's number one, risk, right? Like we're all risk averse, especially in our jobs. We don't get fired for making the wrong decision. So I understand that. And there's psychology around why that inhibits us from making these decisions, right? But I think the other big piece that we forget is that so many of these companies have been product-led for so long, the geniuses, the engineers behind these products, that they haven't made the leap to be customer-centric, right? The customer-centeredness that's so necessary in surviving in today's world.
And so it sounds like you feel like there's a real opportunity to tell the story of the teams behind the products, right? And therefore that opens up a slew of different channels around like building thought leadership content or building video content that tells those stories. Have you guys done much in that?
Yeah, that's another great question. And I think that's exactly right. Where Baker Hughes is a client of ours, has been for a while. And we have been doing, digital marketing performance-based work for them for years and years and years. And, over the last couple of years, we've really been focused on ABM. And a lot of their executive management didn't believe in it. Hey, it's a buzzword. We've got our digital presence. We have our website. Okay, right. That's digital, right?
Yeah.
And I say that tongue in cheek, and I don't mean it that direction, one for one. But their belief is that we're there, we exist, we're doing SEO, and so we're fine. And we bring to the table the fact that like, hey, it's not fine anymore, and your customers expect more, and let's have a conversation around it. And I'm not going to bore you with all of the details of the work that we did for a couple of the marketing campaigns that we launched, but we launched it through the lens of ABM. And then one of the biggest changes they made was bringing in a customer success representative into the conversation, because so many of these customers or brands are led by product, right? Mm-hmm. The beauty and brilliance of their products is what they want to put on display. And we need to fully stop, right? Stop. That's not the way to go forward. The way to go forward is to tell your customers why your products are going to meet their needs, how it's going to meet regulation hurdles, if you will, how it's going to deliver efficiency, how it's actually going to get you home earlier so you can get to your kid's soccer game, right? That's where the money is going to be made, right? It's not necessarily, there's a time and a place for talking about you and why you're great and the features and functions and how these are, huge growth and advancements in technology. But you got to start with them. And I think that notion of being a customer-led campaign made it so successful, right? And it was through the lens of ABM, and within 6 months, I think they saw about 1,300% ROI. And before you know it, literally the executive team said, pound for pound, this is the most successful campaign we've ever launched. And now they're fully led by this ABM motion.
Brilliant. And okay, so now let's talk about distribution a little bit. We talked about owned media, the assets you create in the way of content, but what about the paid and earned side of things? So starting with the paid side of things, you want to amplify the content that you have. Where are you usually looking to do that might be of specific importance in the industrial and manufacturing sector?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple, standard places you're going to be. One is programmatic, where you're buying off the exchanges, right? You understand your audience, you're buying, programmatic media. The other one is paid search. That's intent, right? Well, we should talk about that in a second. You're still leveraging the fact that folks are looking for your products and services, and you want to show up. And then LinkedIn, right? Where you need to introduce yourself to these particular functions within specific organizations, your target account list, right? And then those personas or buyer functions that you're going to be going after, because they may not be looking for what you have, but you have something that they need, right? So, that's, I think, a standard way of thinking about it, right? In terms of the channels that will activate particular campaigns or engagement. Now, obviously, you can go to email and chat-based AI once they're a part of your engine, I call it, your performance engine, right? When they have engaged with you, when they've shared information, you can certainly buy lists. Now, that's going to be a whole different can of worms, right? But the thing to think about today, I think, is unique and revolutionary is also this notion of intent, right? And these ABM platforms like the 6 Senses of the world have done an incredible job of working with a lot of media providers out there to understand the signals that your buyers are showing that they're actually in market to buy. Because think about this.
Let me jump in there. And I have very limited exposure to 6 Sense, but I'm familiar with the brand. Could you first define what 6 Sense is and how it works?
Yeah, so they're a partner of ours, and I got to come clean. It actually was started by my sister. So she co-founded the company. She's my baby sister at Tumbling. It's amazing to see what this company's done. And she has since retired. But this company is on a tear. In the last round, I think they raised $300 million on a $5 billion valuation. They're killing it, right? It's a real success story. Yeah. And essentially, the premise and the reach of this platform is tremendous, right? Because that's why it's able to deliver that type of valuation. But I'm going to get very tactile for a second.
Yeah,
so put it in a way that an industrial manufacturing marketer can understand. Essentially, one of the biggest opportunities within a platform like 6 Sense for ABM is understanding intent. So if you have, let's say, 1,000 customers that you can go after if you're an industrial manufacturer, and within those 1,000 customers, you have 6 or 7 functions. Within those functions, you have 5 or 6 people. You have a couple thousand people you can engage with, right? Mm-hmm. To introduce who you are and have them buy from you, right? Mm-hmm. Well, instead of just going out there and doing this broad-based spend, right? Spending a lot on, let's say, run a site for TechTarget if you're in the tech industry, or even Thomas, right? Mm-hmm. Another strong partner of ours who we've had a great relationship with for 2 decades. you can understand the intent of your buyers. And based on that, there may be only 50 people that you should be spending heavily on to get in front of them, right? And they may have never made it to your website, may never made it to your LinkedIn page or any digital asset for you to understand that. But because these platforms and companies like 6 Sense have understood the environment within the media world, and they're buying that data and they're assessing it, and they have a big data AI play going on, you can begin to then put your message and your experience in front of your best target customers in the most appropriate way at the right time. And that changes everything, right? Because now you're not spending and wasting on those customers that aren't in market, even though they may be a part of your target account list, right? So for us, when you think about that level of targetability is a tremendous sea change in how I think marketers should be thinking about their programs and strategies.
It's really powerful, and you've certainly piqued my interests. Okay. And then in terms of earned media, I mean, just to kind of explore all aspects of the spectrum here, do you see much opportunity, or how if at all, have you guys leveraged earned media to help market the products that are your clients?
I think obviously the most powerful place for earned media is social, right? I mean, I think there's a huge opportunity for these organizations to begin to build communities and engage with their buyers from a social perspective. I think you even see people, and it's interesting, and I don't know where it's come from, but over the last 4 or 5 months, you see brands begin to ask about B2B for TikTok, right? Like that's kind of mind blowing, right? Like I don't know, it's kind of a bit out there, but at the same time, it makes a bit of sense because especially those who are leaning into it and a little bit forward, there's opportunities to create those experiences that brands need, especially from a B2B perspective, to engage, right? And especially as our buyers are more digitally savvy, are staying home. They're not going to conferences, right? This whole transformation that's happening through the lens of COVID has shifted so much of that buying experience where we used to think, especially from an industrial perspective, it's those relationships we meet at the trade shows where we shake hands, we take them to the golf, and we go have a couple of drinks, right? Think about social. It's the opposite end of that spectrum, right? Where you actually are somewhat entertained, right? But at the same time, somewhat educated, right? And from that perspective, there's a huge opportunity to go out there and engage with those folks who want to learn a little bit more about how they can be more effective in their roles, their jobs, and hopefully at some point buy from you.
Do you guys do much on TikTok for your clients? Is that a channel that you're servicing?
At this moment, it's very nascent. So we have a couple of customers kicking the tires on it. And there's some interesting things that could be happening in the very near future. But it's brand new, and from that perspective, we're all in, right? I think there's an opportunity, and I think you just have to get out there and invent a little bit, just like these manufacturers have with products. The same thing from a digital perspective.
We'll have to have you back next time you've really dug into that space and get some of your initial insights. So, okay, well, so what haven't we covered, or what jumps out at you as far as like key areas of opportunity for someone that's in this space and is trying to market a product or service? What haven't we covered?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So number one being clarity, right? We talk about the 3 C's at BOL, right? Clarity, consistency, and confidence. So clarity is having a better understanding of who your best customers are today and will be tomorrow, right? And then from there, making sure you're asking the right questions around how you engage with them and how you solve the right problems for the business, right? So we feel as though often, especially in the manufacturing world, that part is skipped over. Like we feel like the brand has an understanding of who the best customers are, what kind of functions and roles. And frankly, there's a good amount of research that can help to demystify some of those assumptions, and a lot of that being driven through sales because they're the rainmakers, right? They have the biggest voice at the executive table. So that notion of clarity, I think, is extremely important as you think about, where you're going to be spending your dollars, what your total addressable market is, and who you're going to go after from a target account perspective. Then I'm going to talk about confidence. I'll save consistency for last. Confidence is probably the most important component of this, and I'll tell you why. B2B marketers have historically been the builders of brochures, of event, right, product material, like
cut sheets, right?
Yeah, cut sheets. Right. Like they're the make it pretty department, right? Yeah. But haven't historically been at the business table saying, I'm able to drive pipeline and revenue. And everything's changed. This notion of digital transformation, not only through the lens of IoT and how that lands into the products that these customers sell. I mean, think about GE, a former customer of ours, where they were more excited about the data they were selling back to their customers than the product itself, right? That's all part of digital transformation, which is exciting. And so is marketing, right? A big part of like how we engage with our buyers. But where we're missing is this huge opportunity to get into this level of understanding marketing's influence or connection to pipeline revenue and retention, right? Because if you think about it, there's so much more being sourced. We talked about it earlier on that these buyers want to feel smart. They want that experience digitally first before they're going to engage with a human being, more often than not, almost in so many categories and verticals. And what we're missing, right, from a manufacturing perspective, is being able to go back to the board and produce irrefutable evidence that of that buyer who just, purchased $2 million from us, they had, 18 people engaging with our digital presence. They spent a total of like 19 hours before they ever talked to someone in sales. And when you think about it, they spent 6 months kicking the tires with us before they wanted to have any sort of kind of conversation or in-person event, right? That's a huge change. Now, if we can take that and talk about how we can drive and derive value, real value, pipeline, dollars, right? In notion of driving revenue, but also in connection to retention, right? Because we want to make sure they stay with us and they continue to buy from us. So I think that's probably one of the most missed opportunities that marketers in the manufacturing world are losing out on because they're not able to have a conversation with their CEO or CFO around how they're actually driving growth.
Empowering them through doing that.
That's
okay.
right.
And then the last one
is consistency. So there's just an opportunity. We talk about, performance marketing or digital marketing or data-driven marketing, and the consistency that you can deliver for your organization when you talk about the programs through the lens of brand, demand, and ABM, such that you can always find a way to deliver more for less, right? We're in this notion of this recessionary environment. Whether we're in a recession or not, it's kind of to be determined, right? We'll figure that out quarter by quarter,
right?
But it doesn't matter. It exists because people believe it's here, right? And so now they're being asked to do more with less. Well, if you have an engine stood up, right? You have an understanding of the best segments, the next best piece of content, the best channels that are producing pipeline and revenue, you're in a much better position to drive efficiency while you're continuing to drive growth. So that notion of clarity, confidence, and consistency is such an important part of marketing going forward through the lens of manufacturing.
I love that. That's powerful. Okay, very good. Well, I think we're probably up against it here. Thad, that was fantastic. If someone wants to get in touch with you and learn more about BOL Agency or how you guys can help, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. You can shoot me an email, thad.kahlow@bol-agency.com, or you can hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, probably easy way to do it too. It's a unique name. And I'm happy to put you in touch with the right people. We'd love to hear from you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Thad. We appreciate you being here, and we'll have you back sometime soon after you've explored some of these additional channels you're looking into.
Sounds great. I had a blast, John. Thank you.
Thanks, Thad. I hope you enjoyed this episode on industrial product marketing. Did you know we did a whole series on how to market an industrial product? Yeah, we've got it covered from every angle. Here's a link to the next episode. And don't forget to subscribe. By the way, if you're looking for a reliable marketing agency or freelancer to help market your industrial product, give me a shout. We represent a whole roster of vetted marketing teams with deep experience in the industrial products niche. Or go to www.theagencyguide.com to learn more about how we matchmake brands with vetted marketing agencies at no cost. See you soon.